7 and welcome back to our next lesson on what does the Queen actually do. Before we start, please make sure you've got a pen and some paper. If you haven't got them, go get them and I'll see you back here in a second. Okay, so this is actually lesson 7. We haven't got too many of these left. This is our lesson on our next set of monarchs. Last week we looked at Charles I. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to think about our two most recent monarchs. We have Elizabeth I on the left and we have Charles I on your right. So use the words on the screen. We've done this before. Use the words on the screen to compare these two monarchs. How are they similar? How are they different? So two similarities and maybe two differences. Get them written down in your book in sentences. And I'll see you again in about 3 minutes. Spend 3 minutes doing that for me. Okay, so they are both, you could use the word power and say that they're both very powerful monarchs. You could say that they're both in full control. They had the full set of powers. You could say that they acceded to the throne in a very similar way. They both inherited the throne from either a parent or a sibling. You could say that the amount of land they controlled was the same. They both controlled England. Where they're different, maybe the government you could focus on. Elizabeth obviously had full control. She fought against her government, her people, to retain her own status, whereas Charles did the same thing, fought against them, but lost and was eventually executed. You could say their legacy is very different. Elizabeth's reign is referred to as the Golden Age, Elizabethan Golden Age, whereas Charles was very much a hated monarch and is the only monarch to be executed and replaced. So, lots of similarities, lots of difference there. Let's have a look at our new king and queen. So, today, who are we going to look at? We're going to look at a duo for the first time. We're going to look at a king and a queen who ruled together. So today we're going to be looking at William and Mary. We're going to be thinking about who they were, how they came to power, what they controlled, the power they had, and how they are remembered. So let's make a start. William and Mary came to the throne during an event called the Glorious Revolution. I want you to pause this video and I want you to give me a definition of the word revolution, please. So I'll see you again in just 1 minute. So a revolution is when a group within a country or within a government or within a particular subsection come together and they rise up against an oppressor. So a revolution is when a group of people come together and they overthrow something or they try and change something dramatically in a country. Now, the Glorious Revolution is what we're looking at, and I'd like you to summarize the definition. So write the word Glorious Revolution in your books, and I want you to just, or on a piece of paper, or on your Word document, and I just want you to write a short sentence about what the Glorious Revolution was. So my definition of the Glorious Revolution, also called the Revolution of 1688, or the Bloodless Revolution, took place from 1688 to 1689 in England. It involved the overthrowing of a Catholic King James, and who was replaced by his Protestant daughter, Mary, and her Dutch husband, William of Orange. So the Glorious Revolution specifically is the one that took place in 1688, and in which Mary and William take the throne. So straight away we can see that they come to the throne by taking power from Mary's father. A big difference we see there is that her father is Catholic and she is Protestant. And we've already found out there was a big kind of rivalry between Catholics and Protestants. So just finish off that definition, pause the video if necessary, and then we'll move on. So we just need to do a quick recap on last lesson. So last lesson when we looked at Charles, we looked at the divine right of kings and republic. I just want you to spend about 30 seconds on each writing a definition. Okay, so definition for each of the key words. They are important. Okay, so we did do this last lesson, but the divine right of kings is the idea the king is chosen by God to rule and any who deny his power go against God's will. So as we see on this picture, this is the king, and he is receiving the crown from God. So all these people think that God's chosen the king, so all these people will follow the king and do whatever the king says. He creates, he becomes an elevated status. If people go against the king, then they go against God. So by executing Charles I, the people have overturned this idea of the divine right of kings. They are saying that the divine right of kings is not a real thing. A republic is what replaces a king, a country where power is held by a group of people chosen by the public to represent them. So a republic is no king, no queen, a chosen group of people represents the people. So your task then, why is the divine right of kings important to William and Mary? Just spend 1 minute thinking about the idea and come back to me. So it's quite divisive. There are different opinions on this. You could say that it means less to William and Mary than it did to Charles, because obviously, they are chosen by the government to take control, but it still gives them an elevated status. So monarchs at this time, William and Mary, would still understand or recognize the importance of the divine right of kings. But it's not what keeps them on the throne. To keep them on the throne, they have to be liked by Parliament. So, how do William and Mary come to power? What I want you to do is I want you to read the information on the left, and I want you to complete the sentences on the right. So just read, and you need to write 4 sentences. So after a number of years, following the execution of Charles I, the government decided to bring back a king. They decided they needed one person who commanded the respect of the people, because the people still supported a king, to take control. However, the power could not be what it was before. King James II was not a popular king. He was a Catholic, and he dissolved Parliament, and that got Parliament angry. They had to get rid of him. So in 1688, they sent a letter to his daughter Mary and her husband William of Orange, who were both Protestants, and he invited them to take the throne. The Parliament liked Protestants, they disliked Catholics, so they were getting a better monarch. They believed they were getting a better monarch. William and Mary raised an army because they would still have to take control of England, and they headed to England. But lacking support, James II actually retreated and then escaped to France. So there actually never had to be a battle fought. They took the throne without a battle. And it's referred to as the Bloodless Revolution or Glorious Revolution. So complete those sentences. King James II was unpopular because, to stop King James, Parliament decided to. When William and Mary arrived, they were able to. So what were they able to do? And the last question is just a prediction. With the new king and queen, Parliament would want to. So what would Parliament want to do with the new king and queen? Would they let them go, get on with being king like normal, like everyone else? Or would they have different powers? So finish off those sentences and come back to me when you're finished. Okay, so let's have a look at their relationship with Parliament in more detail. I want you to watch video 1 in the description and make notes on the conditions of William and Mary coming to power, which was set out by Parliament. So watch that video, it's about 3 minutes long, and I'll see you once you've watched it. Okay, so obviously there is a major impact on royal power, but what was it? 1 sentence, please. What was the impact on royal power? And then what was the impact on the royal family today? So what's its impact on the royal family today? 2 minutes, see you in a second. Okay, so obviously royal power is reduced, and the impact it has on today is that the royal family today has reduced power because of this. It's really important. So let's have a look at those conditions in a bit more detail. So obviously the monarchs were invited by Parliament, so Parliament chose the monarchs. The government ended the divine right of kings and instead decided that the monarch would be chosen by Parliament. It would allow them to get rid of them if they wanted to. They would not be allowed a standing army without Parliament's approval. They were not allowed to raise money without Parliament's approval. no royal power to lay down the law. The king and queen couldn't appoint or punish judges, and no war without parliament's consent. So the power of the king and queen is stripped down. Everything they want, every important decision they previously could have made, now has to be made with the permission and approval of Parliament. This puts Parliament, for the first time, above the king. So Parliament are now a higher status in terms of power than the king and queen. Most importantly, a Bill of Rights was issued, taking power away from the monarch and spreading it more evenly amongst the people. It's that Bill of Rights that we still have today. It's the Bill of Rights that stops the monarch, the sitting monarch, from abusing their power. So, summarize those first couple of bullet points, maybe choose 2 or 3 and write them down, and then why was the Bill of Rights important? So just a quick description of why the Bill of Rights is important. Remember, the word that we're looking for in there is the word because. That will help you to explain. Okay, that should take you 3 minutes, and I'll see you once you've finished. So, the king has taken the throne. James II is in exile. However, James II is still a threat. While he lives, William and Mary could still lose their throne. James found huge support in Ireland because it was a mainly Catholic country, and William III took an army across the sea to end James's threat. So William III took on this threat, and the two armies met at the Battle of the Boyne in 1690. The battle was won by William III, who secured the crown, and he ended any potential threat of James. This was also huge because it was a Protestant victory over Catholics, and it made them more important, or it made them more powerful. So what I want you to do is I want you to use what I've just said, use the description on the left, and I want you to watch video 2 in the description. I just want you to write a summary of the battle for me. See you in about 3 minutes. Okay, so the final task on this slide is to say why was this an important victory for William and Mary? Why is winning this victory important? Have a think, 1 minute, write down your ideas. So overwhelmingly, it's important because it secures them as monarchs. They're not going to be overthrown. Let's have a look at the final task then. So why was William III and Mary II important? Why were the two of those monarchs so important? So obviously, they're invited to become monarchs by Parliament due to their disagreements with James II, and that highlighted the power of the government at the time. The Glorious Revolution meant they came to power without any bloodshed, which is also important. Parliament made them sign the Bill of Rights, which limited the king and queen's power, so there was no more divine right of kings, no standing army, no raising of money, and no royal power to lay down the law. So they're important because they mark the first time that the government took power from the king and queen. The victory at the Battle of the Boyne ended any threat of James II reclaiming his crown and coming back to power, and this increased the power of the Protestants in England and reduced the influence of the Catholics. So, final task then, I want you to write a paragraph on why you think William and Mary were important, use the information above to help you, also use the sentence starters on the right. So remember, I think William and Mary were important monarchs for, and give me a good reason. Example, I know that. And finally, your explanation is this is important because that last statement is so important. So for good marks, you need to make sure you write 2 paragraphs. For the best possible answer, it's important that you counter your argument. So think about how they are useful, or think about how they are important, and then think about why they're not important. If you've done that, you need to make sure you write a conclusion also. So that's where my video ends. Go off, complete this paragraph, and send it to your history teacher for me. All right, thank you very much for your attention today, and good luck with the rest of your work. Speak to you later. Thank you.